And what is cultural relativism? What is cultural relativism? Setting other cultures. 1 minute. I think want to keep it down, okay? Because I know you take notes also, right? So just keep it stagnant in one place also if you can. Then your hand also will be later. Thanks. Okay. So how do you relate to cultural relativism? What is cultural relativism? What is cultural relativism? Accepting other cultures from your own point of view as well as their own point of view, right? Right or wrong is culture specific and it need not be the same with every culture. Yes? Okay. And we also saw ascribed status versus achieved status, right? What is ascribed status? It's because of who you are and what position you're holding, right? Whether you're young or old, it's because of who you are, right? And then what is achieved status? It is because what you have achieved, right? And what is universalism and particularism? What is universalism and particularism? Yes? Loyalty and universalism is you accept everyone, right? And particularism is you are particularistic in your own view, in your own cultural point of view, right? In your own ethnicity or society. Okay, today's lesson is just about dimensions of culture. As I told you earlier, we will be learning a lot of theories and models that will explain about intercultural management in any setting that we are in, alright? So, talking about that, today's lesson we're just going to introduce you to the various researches and their models that they've created based on cultural studies. Okay? So if you just read this, what does that say? Japanese and American management practices are 95% same, but they vary in almost everything, right? Which means the outlook can be the same, right? The system can be the same, the mechanism can be the same, but when we look into the details, it will differ. For example, the graduates from Taylor's and the graduate from Sunway, of course, both of you are graduates from BIHM or hospitality management, right? Or culinary management. But at the end of the day, when you look into the criteria, you all are 29th in the world, right? Proud about it? No? No? Not even one smiling? Why? Okay, right. So that is the main outlook. So however it looks the same, we just keep talking about cultural management, intercultural issues, the dimensions, but only when we look at it in detail, we will understand the various differences or the vast differences, okay? So basically, if we talk about cultures, the whole study is either emic or ethic. When you talk about emic studies, they concentrate only on one culture, which means anything and everything is only related to that particular surroundings and environment. That is emic studies, okay? When you talk about ethic studies, it talks about all the factors everywhere, the shared factors. Okay, what do you do? The Chinese, what do you all do in Malaysia? The Chinese, what do you do in Shanghai? The Chinese in Indonesia, how do you practice certain religions? How do you practice certain rituals? How do you follow certain festivals? Alright? So that is the factors that are shared everywhere. And they consider the characteristics of a particular culture that are meaningful to the people who belong to that particular culture only. That is emic studies. And they examine how the culture is shared among everyone, right? Irrespective of their ethnicities, irrespective of their national cultures. Okay, and then the factors may not occur in other cultures. Can you give me one example? The factors may not occur in other cultures. Whatever you practice in your culture or in your ethnicity may not occur in the other cultures. Can you give me any example? Culture doesn't really need to be your ethnicity, doesn't really need to be your national culture, doesn't really need to be your religion or anything. It can also be your university culture, the culture between your friends, the culture between your society, right? It can be anything. So can you give me one example for that? It may not occur. Yes, Andrew? Okay. Anything else? Anything else? Teacher? Young Sai Mama. What's that? Drinking tea in the mama's store. Okay, drinking tea in the mama's store. Yamcha is a very traditional tea, is it?
It's just the action.
The action. Okay. Anyone from Bali? They said they practice something called as Nipi. Napi. Nyapi. What is that?
The day of silence.
Yes, it's a day of silence. And?
Usually, everyone has to practice it in closing partners. And you can't go out of your house. You have to stay indoors and you're not allowed to.
So, no lights also, right? Yeah. No lights in the sense like, how about AC and are you allowed to drive? Nothing.
You're not
Which means the entire city comes to a still.
Yes. And even flights don't.
Operate on that day. Which part of the year that comes on?
Much.
March. Any one particular day or it keeps changing every year?
I think it changes. It's always around that time only, but I'm not sure.
So it's a die-hard rule that everybody follows. But it is fixed in March. That's it. So, see, have you all heard of that class?
So,
And I believe that it's been followed by Hindus.
Yeah.
Yes, it's been followed by the Hindus in Bali, that the entire day is observed in silence, right? They're not allowed to do things. So that is emic studies, you know. If you look into their details, then that will tell you why they are practicing it, what are the roots, and what does it evolve around, and what is the significance of that. And similarly, when you talk about ethic studies, they usually involve comparisons to find similarities and differences, right? To find similarities and differences. What do you mean by that? To find similarities and differences. The cultural studies, Mr. Andruma.
Yes.
The last point. In ethic studies.
Yeah.
They involve in seeing the similarities and differences. Say, for example, the way you celebrate Chinese New Year may not be the same the way the Chinese from China celebrate, right? The similarities and differences will have to be involved and analyzed. Why do we do what we do? Okay, so that is what we talk about ethics studies. So this is the very, very generic way of studying culture. First one. Okay, moving towards, next we are going to learn about Edward Hall and his model of culture. So basically, he classified it into two different areas. One is high context culture and low context culture. When you talk about high context culture, everything is depending upon the context, right? When you say the class is boring, okay, when you say the class is boring, in what context are you telling? Right, it can differ from one context to another context. Okay, let me give you another example. What is low context culture then? Low context culture. What does it say? The first point. What does it say? Sharon? Louder? Yes, wherein you don't have to misinterpret the situation. You don't have to misinterpret what is he or she trying to tell me. It's very directly conveyed. The messages are very directly told, and please don't worry about the consequences, you know, because you know that the sender also knows what the receiver is receiving. For example, in Joanne and Bob case. Do you remember Joanne and Bob case? No? Joanne? Who's Joanne? The Korean staff who got offended when the boss walked into the cafeteria. Mr. Bob walked into the cafeteria asking her of some report, and what did she do? She felt very bad. She submitted the report and she took MC, and finally she resigned. Similarly, do you remember Jeffrey and Chan? Yes, Jeffrey and Chan go to a Chinese restaurant, and what happens there, right? So that is a classic example of the class has a 12. Okay, so that is a classic example of high context culture and low context culture. Because high context culture, that's what happened with Jeffrey and Chan. Chan did not tell what he wanted to convey to Jeffrey. He was just trying to fish for compliments, for example, right? But Jeffrey couldn't understand what is he arriving at. So he had to just explicitly say, okay, this try to work something good out of it. Alright? And when you talk about this I context culture, the messages can be indirect, elliptical, and elusive, which means they try to explain a lot of things, but they will never get to direct communication. In the sense, they will not tell you, hey, what you're doing is rude, what you're doing is not good. You know, they will not tell you directly, but they will just try to tell it in a manner that you must understand it yourself. You know, it depends upon the context that you're coming from, you know, where you're talking about. Sometimes you can say it's boring. And in what context are you telling it's boring? Is it because the lecture slides was not good, or is it the class was not good, the lesson was too boring, or the lecturer was too boring, right? Or you are not in a good mood. The context, you need to understand the context. For example, if you talk about guests and when they complain, when they just simply tell you the room was not good, the condition of the room was poor. When you talk about condition of the room was poor, what are you talking about? Which context of the room? That is in the bedroom area, the bathroom area, the lighting, or the aircon, or the TV facilities, or the food that was served in your room. We do not know, right? So it's high context culture. You may not understand the context, and sometimes the meaning will differ from one context to another context. Can you understand, class? Sometimes on Facebook when we go, feeling silly, feeling naughty, feeling bored, right? So in what context you are putting it in, we may not know unless you specify something there or you put up a picture there, then people will understand, right? So that is high context culture without informing directly. But when we talk about low context culture, it is entrusted with a lot of words and entirely it is explained in words. Examples for high context is Japan and for low context is German and Swiss. Are you guys with me? Yes, are you supposed to be doing a presentation, Andrew? No. Are you doing a presentation now? No. Okay. So first one is Edward Hall model. Alright, what's up is it?
Just now looking for the culture thingy.
Oh, culture thingy, okay. Share it with us, it is really weird, we're also interested to know.
Yeah, it's like
Class, are you interested to know?
yes.
Okay, we saw the onion manifestation, right? That is the basic layers of culture. It can be in any culture that we refer to, right? But when you talk about layers of culture, it can come from national level, right? Which means the subcultures or the ethnicities or the communities go up to make a national culture, and the various national culture go up to make the global culture. So that is one layer of culture. Next, you have the gender level. Right? What is the gender level culture? Whether it's dominated by the masculine or the feminine domination is high. What did you all hear from Mr. Greg the other day in Marriage International talk during their presentation? What did he say? Did I ask you all earlier? Did I ask you guys earlier? No. What did he say, Karuna?
Passion.
You answered. Most of it? Most of his department staff, or 80% of his department staff are females, and how they work? A lot of talking, that's not the way he said. He said they work better, right? They achieve more, but then of course there's a lot of talking, but they achieve more when compared to men, right? So that is the gender level culture. Some organizations love to have more of women working in their culture, whereas some organizations prefer to have men. It depends upon the context that they come from, alright? So that's gender level. Next one is generation level. Do you relate to the generation level, Bivali? What do you mean by generation level culture? The various? Louder? I didn't hear you. Generation level culture. What do you mean by that? Different generations, different culture. So when you enter into the industry, do you see only your generation level people? No, definitely you will have different generations. Of course, you're going to have generation X, and how you are going to fit into that culture does matter. Okay? And then you see your social class level. What do you mean by social class level? I don't know how many of you can relate to it, but do you have any caste system in your countries? Yes?
Caste. We don't have. Yeah.
You don't have caste. Anyone else? Anyone, are you all aware of the caste systems, the class systems, which means, yes, are you aware of it? Yeah, even in my country, we have various castes and the government reserves few seats. For example, if you have about, you're going to recruit about 100 people in your organization, you need to reserve 20 seats minimum, for example, like 20 or 50 or sometimes 30 for that particular class of people. The community that they come from does matter to them, So social class level, that is also another segmentation or layer of culture. And then you have the organizational, departmental and corporate level culture. What is organizational, departmental and corporate level culture? Every organization will have its own culture, yes? What culture do you all have in Taylor's University? Yes, class culture. What did you say, Sharon? Louder. Last meeting culture. Student culture. Oh, today's culture itself is last meeting. You are right. I was told about this. This training last minute only. That's why I had to cancel it today. If not, I would have done it earlier. Okay, and I didn't have any choice. So sometimes it happens like that. I will remove the video after today. Okay, after this. Okay, so each organization will derive or a culture is created among the employees. Are you all with me, class? Yes, I know it's just one class for you all today, but it's not the only class for me today. Okay, please bear with me. I have to finish in only 25 minutes more. Okay, Hofstede model. Please turn to the person next and say Hofstede model. Hofstede's model. Very important. Very important. Very important. Okay. Yes. Yes. Okay, he is the person who is the founder of the cultural model, and based on his models, many other models have come out, but based on his model and the way he analyzed it. He is a Dutch researcher, and he was asked by the IBM company. You all know the IBM company? Yes. In 1966 and 1967, to analyze culture in their organization. Alright? So look at the countries, the number of countries that you went to. 44 countries, 116,000 questionnaires, completed questionnaires were collected. That time there was no Google Docs, Google Forms, in 1966 and 1967. Alright? So how you just imagine how you would have collected this survey. So he came out, it was published only in 1980. So initially when he published with these 5 models or the 5 dimensions. One is individualism versus collectivism. Today I'm just going to introduce you to the various models only, alright? We're not going to just study thoroughly yourself. The other classes we will learn each model separately. I'm just introducing you all so you just understand the basic concept of it. I've uploaded a few videos on times. But you can also go in and like some TED talks and all, just go in and listen to them. It might help you understand better. Alright? So first one is individualism versus collectivism. What do you mean by that? It talks about your perception of I or we. Individualism is like more towards I, what I say, what I do, right? You all also have to do. So that's that kind of culture. But whereas collectivism is more of a group synergy. Okay, we all decide to do like this, like we all agree to do like this. So it's the I and the we there, alright? And then you have power distance. What is power distance? Power distance. Is it the spending, what is power distance? Any idea? Okay, in your countries, is it okay for you all to go and meet the CEO of any company just like that, just seek an appointment? No. Or is it okay for you to just be friends with your boss on Facebook? Comment something to your boss on Facebook. Is it okay? No. To an extent, your country, no. Kenya? Yeah, no. Even in my country, it's not possible because the power distance is so high, which means the employer and employee relationships is very, very hard and fast. That means you cannot simply approach your employer as your friend, right? He's a boss, means boss. So that is the power distance. So which means that creates a lot of setback for the employees to to go and express themselves, or the employers to communicate with their employees. So it's both ways. That is power distance. All right. And then you have uncertainty avoidance. What is uncertainty avoidance? Uncertainty avoidance is how you prepare yourself for crisis management or risks. Okay, that is uncertainty avoidance. And all these dimensions, if you look at it, it has various indexes. For example, if you talk about individual versus collectivism, it talks like IDV. Power distance is PEI, power distance index, right? And uncertainty avoidance is UAI, right? And similarly, talk about masculinity versus femininity. What is masculinity versus femininity? Yes, the cultures, the national cultures or the global cultures, is it male dominated or female dominated? Right? When we talk about femininity, it's more towards feminism, like it's female dominated. But nowadays, which country says it's female dominated? Anyone knows that? Any country that is female dominated, any culture that is female dominated, you can't think of it, right? Any culture that is male dominated? Yeah? Any culture? No culture, any country?
Saudi.
Yes, Saudi,
Yeah,
India,
Saudi.
all these are male-dominated cultures. Malaysia is not that bad. No, Malaysia is like
No.
50-50. Yes. So then you have long-term orientation versus short-term orientation. What is long-term versus short-term orientation? Long-term versus short-term orientation. It is long-term orientation is what we follow the Confucius theory. Have you all heard of the Confucius theory, right? Yes? No? Come prepared in the next class. What is Confucius theory? Just read it and come. Just give a glance through Google, you will know. Okay? So long-term orientation is anything you do within your culture or your organization. It is for a far-sighted vision, which means whatever you do today, you will reap the results in the coming days, or the coming years, in the coming time. Right? But short-term orientation is you do anything like that now, you get your results like last minute. Okay? You prepare for your exam today and you go for exam tomorrow. You get the results the next week. That's short-term orientation. Which means you get prepared only for that particular period of time, right? That is long-term versus short-term. And then you have this indulgence versus restraint. This part was added in 2001. So initially when this was published, it was only 5 dimensions in 1980. But then in 2001, we also added one more dimension, which is indulgence. How you involve yourself in the organization's policies and rituals and values, and or the level that you refrain yourself from it. Okay, so that is Hofstede model. It has 6 dimensions. Moving further, you have this. Okay, this is the Hofstede model. Trompenaar's model. Turn to your person and say Trompenaar's model. His full name is Fons Trompenaar. Okay. Okay. He came up with these dimensions of. He just added a few more. Like you come up with. He came up with 7 dimensions of intercultural management. Some might overlap, but he has a different perception of each. It was evolved around 1997, and he came up with universalism versus particularism. Universalism versus particularism is law in universalism. Whether your friend is affected, whether your family is affected, I don't care. Law is law, right? And particularism is you deal with feelings. Okay, so you just say. Class starts at 12 o'clock, you have to be here at 12 o'clock. Law is law, right? Sometimes when you deal with particularism, you say, okay lah, 12:15, okay, boleh tahan, right? Just wait for it. 12:30, the boleh tahan, we cannot take it. So that is feelings, particularism. That is universalism versus particularism. Then you have individualism versus collectivism, similar to the previous model, I and we.